Okay, Lifespans class, back with you again. This is Dr. Ang. I'm headed into chapter 8. Again, preschool child social and personality development, specifically in chapter 8. A lot of this is going to overlap, so just bear with me on that. Some of it's just solidifying concepts that are critical to the preschool child, so important concepts that we need to know and worth repeating. However, now some of it we're going to bring in is going to be specifically to social and personality development, specific to the preschool child. Forming a sense of self or self-concept is a collectivist versus individualist orientation, and an interdependence versus uniqueness. So each preschooler is going to transitioning from a sense of this is what my caregivers have always done and what they preferred, and now they're going to branch out more into, as they start to get in to preschool, if they do that outside of the home, where they start to interact with more friends or teachers or other individuals, they're going to start to see, hey, I might want to do that, or I might want to bring that in my lunch, or different things, or this friend does ballet, but yet my family signs me up for soccer, and maybe I want to do that instead. Or why do I always have this in my lunch? I'd like to try that. Or this kid always has this, and I want to try that. Or why is my coat always blue and she has a pink coat? I want a pink coat. So different things like this are going to transpire into them wanting their own sense of uniqueness, and then being their own individual. And we want to foster that as they seek independence. So psychosocial development in Eric's stage. Okay, Erikson is the whole framework that we like to bring in to this course. So Erikson's stage is autonomy versus shame and doubt. And then it also initiative versus guilt. So as I initiate and try something, is it going to be met with, good job, that's awesome, you did that so well, let's try it again and let's get a little further this time. Or if they try to ride on a bike and they get a few pedals in and then they fall over, if that's meant with great job, I mean, you did that, you look at you, you actually started riding a bike, this is a big boy bike, good job, you've done so well, let's try it again, I'm so proud of you. If you're met with that environment versus, good grief, what are you doing? You can look at that, you didn't get very far at all. What are you doing? Focus. What's the problem? Can't you see everyone else is riding their bike? What's the matter with you? You better not have scratched that bike or tore up those pants, whatever it may be, or your elbow is bleeding. Get up, come on, what's the matter with you? Wipe it off and let's get going. Why, you're behind, what's the matter with you? That environment is not going to foster it's going to be more of shame and doubt and guilt. And for that child, it's probably going to be very difficult for them to get back on the bike if they're met with that response. So autonomy and initiative, and I'm fostering, go out and try something, and I'm going to be cheering you on. This is awesome. And the more you try it, the more you practice, you're going to progress into mastering that skill. So race and ethnic awareness, they're going to start to realize that around 3 or 4. They're going to notice not everyone looks like them. And this can be race and ethnic, but it can also be just simply not everyone has the same color of hair as me. Some people are shorter, some people are taller, some people are larger, some people are smaller, some people are better at certain activities, some people are better at other activities. They'll just start to notice differences as well as similarities. Gender identity also comes in this stage where they start to make closer attention to, okay, these are males and these are females. These other kids are like me, as I am a female, these are males, and they tend to cluster a little bit more with their gender. However, not all the time. If there's someone that you've grown up around, they've been with a lot, or they have siblings, like a young girl that has older brothers may gravitate more towards the male students, and that's fine as well. So preschool social development, friendships, and shared experiences. So if you start to formulate teams, or you go to ballet class, or you go to art class, or you're learning an instrument, you tend to gravitate towards those that like to do the things that you like to do. So if you go on the playground and you like to play house, you're going to gravitate to the kids that are over inside of the little cabin playing house. You're going to gravitate, if you like sports or you like soccer, whatever it is that you like, you're going to gravitate to, if there's a ball on the playground, that's where you're going to gravitate to. And your friendships are often formed in those shared experiences. Improving children's social skills. Again, if you want to make friends, you need to be a good friend. So what does that look like in having those conversations? Children can increasingly see the world from another perspective. So now they're going to start to see, and it usually takes either them getting hurt, someone else getting hurt, for them to learn in that experience. So I was angry and I took the ball away, and then when I got in trouble, I threw it at my buddy, and now he doesn't want to be my friend, and that hurts my feelings. So what does that look like? Maybe next time when I get angry or I want the ball, I'll go and I'll ask and I'll play nicely, and then I'll get the ball, and then I still have my friend. Increase language skills, promote improved social interaction and skills. So the more you can hear caregivers often say, use your words. Don't grunt at me and don't just take something from me. Use your words and use manners and be appropriate. And then you can get the end result, typically, that you desired. Social aspects of play: functional, constructive, parallel, onlooker, associative, and cooperative. This is something that I do want you to pay attention to. We'll look up each one of these and you can see the different aspects, and I hit them in another slide here coming up, but just do know the different aspects of play. Parallel play, for example, I'll go over just a couple of these. Parallel play is, you can be playing house and I can be playing house right beside you, but we're not playing together. So and these are usually as a child warms up into a situation, they can do this. And it also is the signs of difference between an early preschooler versus a later preschooler. So also an onlooker is going to be the child, the preschooler, that can kind of stay at the back of the room and just watches. And when encouraged to, hey, you want to come play soccer? They don't want to come play soccer. They just want to observe. It's more of an onlooker, is more of an observing role. So those are a couple examples, but we'll hit them a little deeper as we go. Discipline and authority or parenting styles has a lot to do with this when we are talking about. There's a lot of schools of thought, so I'm not putting my own school of thought onto you. I just want to make you aware of the information. Authoritarian, permissive, authoritative, uninvolved. And where do you think of your parents were raised, and then where do you see yourself as a parent when you have kids? So authoritative, you can have, it's my way or the highway. I don't care what you think. I don't care what you want to do. You're going to do what I tell you to do. Permissive can be more, I'm going to just let the child do whatever they want to do, and they basically run all over me, and I have no role as parent or authoritative figure, the authority in the home and in the relationship, because I just permit basically everything that the kid wants to do, the preschooler wants to do. You can get uninvolved, where they are totally checked out. That's another style. But knowing that these all come into play, and how that preschooler in that growth and development and that social aspect is formed, is based on a lot of times the form of discipline or authority. This can also be in the case of a teacher. If you have a teacher that's very, does not exemplify a lot of patience and loving nature, you can get a child or a preschooler that's afraid to try for fear of failure. You can see that as well. So pay attention to the different styles of parenting or discipline. Discipline is a very hot topic. There's spanking, there's timeout, There's different things, cause and effect, that you can bring into play for preschool. A lot of times it's very specific to a certain family and the discipline that they feel is appropriate in their home. But then a lot of times it can be very specific to the child of itself. If I have 5 kids, I have 3 or 4 that I discipline, somewhat similarly. And then I have one over here that needs a completely different set of guidelines and standards as far as what discipline will be in the case of this child. Not every child has the same things that motivate them or things that can help change their course of behavior. So you have to tap into that and find out. Obviously, spanking is not necessarily the first choice. Some people don't believe in it at all. That can be very specific, like I said. And obviously, the fear of spanking, that it crosses over from the gray, even a gray area, into a very inappropriate that can set or lean anywhere close to an abusive relationship. So that's why some steer away from that. In a healthy environment, you can view that as appropriate. So that's just specific, but it is good to know as far as what the discipline is. The course of discipline will be for that child, because you do want to keep them healthy and safe, and you want to foster healthy relationships and behaviors. So some form of discipline must be in place. But the key word with a preschooler is not as much what the discipline is that it's consistent. So consistency is going to be key, because if they find a loophole, they're going to get through it. If they find an inch, they're going to take a mile, because they're exploring everything. What does this look like? What can I get away with, as sense? Am I going to be able to do this? Or they tell me don't go out in the front yard without asking, but no one does anything. I never get in trouble. So the next thing you find out, they're out in the street. They're going to continue to push those limits. So setting healthy boundaries and then enforcing them with consistency is critical for the discipline for a preschooler. Abuse and violence. It's important to note here, it's not just physical. For this stage, it can very much so, as they seek their independence, it can turn into verbal and emotional abuse or violence, neglect. Child abuse is also seen very frequently in this stage as well. As they seek to explore, they can be confined, different things. And specifically, as they become inquisitive, we know even with human trafficking, different things that are exposed to in society today, that we want to educate them. And it's critical when they can't see beyond the here and now and the immediate. It's very important that we educate them on safety, as far as for strangers, and who they would go with, who they would not go with. Especially when we talked about a teacher can read a book and they become very empathetic for a dog or a lost dog. They can be lured away in a setting with a stranger based off of that same information, the same way a teacher lures them in for, can we say, for the purposes of education. Someone else can lure them away, and it can be very, very dangerous situation. So making sure we've communicated that as well, and warning signs. And as a nurse, I'm speaking from a nursing aspect. Knowing the signs of physical violence or abuse are critical. If I have a snapshot of a child that maybe just comes in for get their tonsils removed, and I notice there's bruising, or there's different things, what's indicative of or could point to or raise red flags with respect to child abuse. That may be the one little window or sliver when they're around a healthcare professional that could address that appropriately during that time, or they could be sent back into the same abusive situation. So you want to be very, very in tune with that. Moral development and aggression, a sense of what is right and wrong, is very critical that we teach this now. Although you want to sit in that chair, it's not appropriate for you to take that student and throw them to the ground in order for you to sit there. What else could you have done? What could you have said? Working through some of these, even role play, are going to be critical of how can you express yourself and avoid aggression to get what you want. How else can you achieve the results that you are wanting? Piaget's view of moral development. morality, initial stage of 4 to 7, that's when they start to get a sense of morality. I don't like how this feels. That wasn't right, and that's not right for my friend. Now I may start towards the end of preschool years. I don't like how that feels. Therefore, I'm going to stand up for my little buddy over here because it doesn't feel good when somebody makes fun of you or leaves you out. So I'm going to start to see a sense of morality and want what's right and appropriate for people. I want justice. I want justice for others as well. That is pushing it, whether that comes in the preschool stage. That's usually a little bit later, but they're going to start to at least be aware. They may not do anything about it, but they're going to be aware that I was left out and I know how that feels. Or what about that puppy that we drove by that doesn't have a home? We need to stop and get it. Or what about, I just saw my friend still standing on the curb. Is he not getting picked up? Can we take him home? They're wanting to make sure people are cared for and there's justice for others. Piaget underestimated the ages of moral development. This has been argued. You can go through the information and kind of see what you think, but with regard to Piaget. But the key here is just knowing moral development is starting and kind of see what ages. You're not going to be tested over that, but just a kind of inquisitive just to see where you think at what stage you think moral development will set in. So Piaget also, incipient corporation is at 7 to 10. Autonomous corporation is at 10 plus. These are obviously past preschool, so don't worry about this slide. We'll get into this in the next lecture next week. Social learning approaches to morality. Abstract modeling begins as a developed generalized principles that underlie the behavior, and they are observing rewards of moral desired behavior. So basically, what is the desired outcome that you want, and then what can you do about it? And empathy and moral behavior are coming hand in hand. Like I said, they're starting to have empathy as they start to become more aware of their feelings and get a grasp on that and know how it feels in certain situations. Then they're going to be more apt to then have that and want that for those around them as well. So what is right and wrong for me? And then I'm going to want to make sure that those around me are abiding by that in order for me to be at peace as well. I'm going to need to know if this is wrong for me, then I think it's wrong for those around me. And that's how I'm going to have harmony, is if there's a sense of morality. And this is obviously something they're just tapping into, and the well goes a lot deeper, but they are aware that now there's a sense of morality. Aggression and violence, again, aggression is the intentional injury or harm to another person. And what is acceptable and what's not. If someone takes something from you and they're bullying you on the playground, at what point is it okay for you to take it into your own hands? When is it aggression? When is it violent? When would you be in trouble? When is it appropriate that you're standing up for yourself? What if you see someone picking on your friend? Is it okay to go up and shove them? What is appropriate and what's not? And having those conversations usually is helpful, but a lot of times they don't come until you've gotten a note from the teacher of something that the child has done, and then you address it in that moment. What else could we have done? I appreciate the fact that you were standing up for Katie. That was very, very sweet of you. But what maybe could we do next time, rather than running up and shoving Johnny down? What else could we have done? Maybe we could have gotten some help. Maybe we could have used our words appropriately first and tried maybe a plan A before we resorted to that and took it into our own hands, because now you're also in trouble. And you didn't want him being bullying and being violent to Katie, but now you did it to him, so now you're involved in the situation. Okay, roots of aggression. Let's see, you can see, you can look into this. I have a link if you want to see this study. You can look into that, but that's not going to be a critical piece. Instrumental aggression, relational aggression. you don't need to dive, I've got several slides on this, you don't need to dive overly deep into these levels of aggression. Just know that it's important that we find boundaries and then alternative methods to get what the preschooler is after. Television and violence, we touched on this in chapter 7. We're revisiting it again. I have a link here that you can click on to see cognitive approaches to aggression. How does one respond to provoking behavior? It's going to happen. It's going to happen frequently. So how does the preschooler respond to that? Ways to encourage preschoolers' moral conduct and reducing the incidence of aggression. Again, we just said as you're coming into preschooler, now we're teaching them to communicate for themselves appropriately and independently. So when the caregiver's not there to prompt the preschooler, how are they going to react? And if it's a impulsive behavior that's also indicative of and specific to a preschooler, we know that about a preschooler. So what are they going to do in that moment when they are provoked? Are they going to result to aggression? And if so, to what level? What are the parents' roles or caregivers' role in dealing with these feelings of aggression? So obviously, as a caregiver, it's going to be critical we don't provoke that. So if we're belittling and we're talking down to a child every time they try to do something, we're constantly talking down to them, then that can also provoke aggression in a child. Research shows these are linked. So that's something that a caregiver or parent can pull back on that as well. And if you're positive and nurturing, that's going to be modeled as well. So maybe they would do that in a situation rather than resulting to aggression or verbally ridiculing another child, because we know, as we mentioned in chapter 7, they're going to say what they hear and they're going to do what they see. So also monitoring, what are they watching on their screens? Are they watching aggression and violence? And then we wonder why they're aggressive and violent on the playground. There's just these direct links. As the sponge comes, that's what when we squeeze, that's what's going to come back out, whatever we have put in and allowed as caregivers. So that basically wraps up. That was a little quicker, but that wraps up chapter 8 with regards to the preschooler. And again, if you have any questions about the preschooler, please feel free to reach out. There are some other links and resources available in Harvey in the folders, the content folders for both chapters 7 and 8. And you will also be doing your one-page reflective paper on Erickson's stage for the preschooler. You'll also be turning that in by Tuesday. So if you have any questions in the meantime, please reach out. We do have an exam coming, so I will give you more details. I'm actually going to post another video to kind of give you a heads up on that. But reach out if you have any questions or concerns for me. Thank you. Have a super week. Bye-bye.